And please welcome him, Dr. Christoph Gebald. Hi, Christoph.
Hey.
Nice to meet you. How are you doing? How was your arrival to Berlin?
Great, we're on a roll. We have a good time.
When we talk about the topic of the next good 15 minutes, and when we talk about this European perspective when it comes to carbon removal, of course, we are thrilled to have you and to talk with you about Climeworks, because carbon removal is more than just an environmental necessity. I think that is the baseline that we're debating here. It's about industrial resilience. It's about shaping up the first mover advantage as well in Europe and shaping one of the defining technologies when it comes to the next decade. So I always love to understand from founders, from CEOs, where they are coming from. And Christoph, that's why I would love to hear from you. Take us also again back to the beginning, to the moment where you said, okay, I'm convinced that I will take carbon removal as a solution, and I don't see it just as a science fiction, but I do see a business model out of it. What was that moment of enlightening?
Yeah. Well, first of all, let me thank you for having me. And to your question in the early days, that wasn't mentioned in the intro, I've been doing that for the last 18 years. So seeing those startups warms my heart and reminds me of like almost 20 years ago. As you said, today, carbon dioxide removal is scientifically proven to be needed. Like every climate report, the IPCC reports you look at state, carbon removal is needed on a massive scale, 15 billion tons in the next 25 years. Now, when we started the company and when I started my research, that was not the case. Like climate science did not recommend to do that. How I approached that, or how did we come about the idea to your question, in Germany, for example, every resident of Germany produces 500 kilograms of waste annually. And the waste is treated, right, either burned or landfill. Like every German resident, on the other hand, produces 7 tons, so 7,000 kilograms of CO2 each year. And guess what? It's not taken care of, right? The only reason it's not taken care of, we can't smell it. It's a gas. It goes in the atmosphere. We can't see it. But imagine it was trash. It was a disaster, right? We couldn't exit from our doors. So that was the very fundamental thought of Climeworks 20 years ago when I researched on the topic and was sitting on a technology that could capture CO2 from the air. It was, as an engineer, it was entirely logic to me that one day there will be a climate utility pulling carbon dioxide from the air and storing it at the ground, like we do it with waste, like we do it with water. And fast forward 2025 or 2024 last year, the world has blown the 1.5 degree target. Very proud, of course a joke. First time in history, or in the last 100,000 years, we're beyond 1.5 degrees. We're in a world of overshoot. We're living exactly that phase where we have too much CO2 in the air.
Explain me one thing. How does this work, your technology at Climeworks? Because I pictured it always as a big CO2 vacuum cleaner. Is that the correct image, or would you add something on that to understand the technology behind it and to understand what drives you then?
That's a very good way of describing it. Think of it as very big devices. We build modular plants, 40-foot shipping containers with ventilators. They suck in atmospheric air, and inside the secret happens. We have a filter material that filters the CO2 on its surface. Every couple of hours, we release again the CO2 from the surface, we get it as a pure gas, and then we store it in the ground. We do that up in Iceland. There's excellent geology, very good low-carbon, low-cost energy to drive the process. That's the only place on Earth where this is currently being done. Essentially, a big vacuum cleaner for the atmosphere.
But that will cost a lot of energy, right? Because why did you decide to go that way? It's always the dependencies when we talk about air capture, direct air capture. Do we do it via the electrolysis or do we do it via the hydrolysis? So tell us why you made your decision.
My background, as mentioned, I'm an engineer by training. My background is thermodynamics. I'm afraid there's no free lunch when it comes to getting carbon back out of the air. Like thermodynamics say, you need energy. It's like we create a chaos, and like ordering a chaos requires energy. It's like if you gotta clean up your room, you need energy to do that. The same we can.
So electrolysis,
we do to the atmosphere. Nevertheless, you want to do it with the most energy efficient way, and we believe that we have the most energy efficient technology on Earth to pull carbon dioxide from the air, and you want to marry it with a site where you have low carbon, low cost energy, in order to have as little as possible gray emissions when you operate the plant. Now, one thought on energy, since you mentioned it requires a lot of energy, and like media, or you're a journalist, so media report a lot about that. The thought I would like to offer is that it actually provides a lot of co-benefits. Electric cars, early days, were said to use also energy from the grid, and it might compete with other applications. But there are positive tipping points, right? Like electric vehicles helped battery costs to come down. Lower cost batteries help to store renewable energies, is essentially positively helping the renewable system to be built out. The same will be done by direct air capture. We can take energy when others can't, and in such we can help load balancing and bring stability to the extension of renewables.
Just to understand it, again, there are a couple of startups in the field, of course, and when it comes to direct air capture, nearly 50 to my research. And as I mentioned, some follow hydrolysis. When it comes to numbers, only 10%. You with Climeworks, you follow the 90%. When it comes to electrolysis, again, what was for you the beneficial way to go towards electrolysis and to go that way with higher energy demands?
Well, it's actually lower energy demands. Like we use the process that thermodynamically uses much less energy than other processes.
Okay. When it comes to these political ecosystems now, and we mentioned that earlier in the different debates, that of course sustainable targets, they still need to be covered, but it's a different political ecosystem now we are in. Political priorities are shifting. We all heard about the geopolitical tensions, of course. Who's paying then for carbon capture in the future when these political shifts are rearranging the ecosystem for sustainable development?
Well, where climate ambition is fluctuating, obviously, and we're living through that, climate science does not. It's physics. Like if I lift this thing and let it go, it'll go down and not up. That's the same with climate science. It's like a physical law that's not negotiable. What is required? You need companies like those on stage to provide solutions, and you need, as you ask, you need dollars, right? You need a market that is paying for that. Who is that market? In our case, it's voluntary actors. We have more than 200 corporate clients buying carbon dioxide removal credits from Climeworks in long-term agreements. So how does that look like? A Microsoft, a JP Morgan, a Boston Consulting, like tech, professional service, financial service, hard to abate, Lufthansa, for example, British Airways, are paying us in 5 to 15-year agreement, fixed volumes, so fixed tonnage per annum, fixed price, in order to get CO2 back out of the air. Again, it's more than 200 corporate buyers at the moment. It's several 10,000s of private buyers. Bill Gates uses our service. Coldplay, maybe some of you were at Coldplay concerts. At the end, there's a big Climeworks plan, the Climeworks logo, net zero touring. So those are the current actors. I do think that in the next 5 years, there will be a transition from the current voluntary regime to a compliance regime. And I'm very happy to see that today governments are starting to have discussions around the overshoot, what I mentioned in the beginning, and that governments are starting to embrace the topic of carbon dioxide removal, implemented in net zero strategies. The Commission, the European Commission is leading. They embrace carbon removals. Carbon dioxide removal will be integrated in the EU ETS trading scheme in 2031. Japan does a lot of work. Singapore does a lot of work. So a lot is happening. And I see from those voluntary actors a movement to the compliance sector within the next 5 years, presumably.
Still with that regard, how do you face then the political shifts on a global scale with these headwinds when it comes to build up resilience? Because it's also connected, of course, to funding mechanisms. And with the new US administration or different developments on the political sphere, there will be, of course, consequences to the funding sphere. So how do you stay resilient to that?
Well, the old Rothschild once said, you have to buy when cannonballs are flying, right? And right now the cannonballs are obviously flying, so it's a good time to look into opportunities. And I think that's our role as entrepreneurs. Our role is not to complain about what's being done in politics, but to find opportunities. And they are, the beauty about human beings is that humans are not a homogeneous mass and everyone does the same. It's a very heterogeneous mass, actually, and people act very differently in a very diverse way. And the beauty is that where some countries step down, some other countries step up and keep the course. Like in the Middle East, there's a lot of action. They stay the course. They do understand that the transition will be one of the bigger business opportunities in the next years to come. China does a lot of work. I mentioned Japan. Japan is leading big time in our topic. So for us as entrepreneurs, it simply means to build the right pipelines, build the right opportunities, and to have the resilient as a consequence of that.
And where did Europe enable you to grow and to succeed?
That's a very good question. So my blood is German. I grew up in a very traditional Siemens family in Germany. I did my undergrad in ETH Zurich in Switzerland and grad school in Berkeley in California. So I saw some different, or I got a flavor of different systems, so to say. Where Europe enabled me, and side note, the company is incorporated in Zurich. That's where our headquarters and where I currently live. The infrastructure and the innovation we saw at ETH Zurich was enormous, and the laboratories, the infrastructure to research was no comparison to the United States, for example. So that was amazing. The early seed funding opportunities, the growth funding opportunities are incredible. So
is it a Swiss phenomena or a European phenomena?
I can speak to ETH Zurich because this is where I studied. I can't speak to other European universities, I'm afraid. But what I can say in comparison to the US university I was, it is remarkable. It is really remarkable. It's outstanding. Where I see limits is in a phase where we currently are, when it comes, like currently we're in the conundrum that the plants we're building still have venture-like risks, but the returns that are expected are infrastructure-like returns, like a bridge or a port or an airport, right? Like 15% annual return, essentially no risk. And that doesn't square, right? And this is where Europe has limitations. What is needed is equity in this phase, and that's lacking. There, the United States is doing a lot of work. Other countries are doing a lot of work. So I wish that Europe is getting up.
Coming to almost the end, Christoph, everybody who's, a founder, I assume, has some scars. Some call it learnings, others call it scars. What's your scar?
Well, there's a very famous quote of Bill Gates. He once said...
No, your
No, but it comes to my scar. He said, you overestimate what you'll achieve in a year, but you underestimate what you achieve in 10 years. So I mentioned I've been doing that for 20 years now almost, right? And it turns out that for our industry, maybe the statement doesn't apply, and that's the scar, that you even overestimate what you can achieve in 10 years, right? The point I would like to make is that managing this transition is a hardware task. It's something that has been done, like Haber-Bosch was cited in one of the pitches. That was done in this country 100 years ago, right? And that's not a transition like Minister Le Maire said earlier today. Things have to go very quick. The challenge with infrastructure business and hardware business is they're not moving quickly.
It takes time.
Still, we have AI, we have all the crazy tools, but it still takes time. It takes test and refine cycles, and I simply underestimated the time that is needed and burned our fingers.
What is a learning that you would like to share with the startup guys sitting there, the family, the startup family? Is there something that you would actually share with them for their journey as a little message?
Well, stay optimistic. I think it's where I think the current sentiment will not allow you to be very, like if you read newspaper, right, you might not be very optimistic about climate tech, right? Like climate has a backseat right now in the current global discussion. But it's for us entrepreneurs to figure out those opportunities, and they are. You'll be surprised. Again, going back to like people being heterogeneous, it's a bit like a waterbed. Not that I have one, but if someone presses really hard on one side and says climate change doesn't exist, something will come out on the other side, right? And someone will raise their hand and say, "Oh, you know what? I high five you, and I do agree climate change exists." It's our role to find them, so to find the needle in the haystack, right? And I can just motivate you if you hit boundaries, continue searching. For us, the secret sauce and why I'm super optimistic is to build pipelines. You don't only bet on one solution, but build robust pipelines. When you do projects, don't only bet on one project, build a project pipeline. When you act commercially, we are the only firm globally that, by 2 orders of magnitude, our competitors have clients, but they maximum have 10 clients. If one has a hiccup, you have an issue, right? So you want to diversify. I think diversification in the current very volatile environment is really the way to act for companies like us.
Noted, right? Yes. Thank you very much to Dr. Christoph Gebald. Thank you. Thank you, Christoph. All the best.